Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is fix the bus. So this here is my tow rig, 2002 Excursion V10 Triton power. And it's got like 180,000 miles on it, and it's pretty much just towed my for its entire life. So the differential is making some weird bad noises, stick slip situations, so I thought I would be nice to it and fix it. So instead of laying on the dirt, I decided to do this instead. So it's really not that bad of a job to pull the axle out of here. So just pop these U-bolts off. Well, not in this order, but and then you have to disconnect the brake line, the ABS sensor wire, and the brake line. I'm going to put new shocks on it anyway, so I had to pull those off as well. And then it actually took probably longer to get this thing jacked up and on jack stands because, you know, dirt. So I have some 3/4 inch plywood that I kind of use for this, and then jack stand sitting on some 4x6s and propped up with some 2x4s just as a safety. And so I just put the floor jack under it there, put it under the pumpkin, and then I was able to roll it out to about here. And then I got Ricardo, my trusty skid steer, put some ratchet straps around it and dropped it over here on some jack stands. So now I have a nice workable table. I actually used my engine hoist here to pull the diff out because it weighs, I don't know, a lot, 100 pounds or something. So that was easier just to get it free. I think I'll throw this guy into the molasses tank. I got to clean all the other bits and pieces up, but never done one of these size differentials before, which is, they're all kind of the same, except for I'm used to having a case spreader. Like typically there's little holes right here and here, so you can put a case spreader on it to get the carrier back in, but this one doesn't have that. So before I go too much farther, I pulled the carrier out. I'll show you that in a bit, but I'm gonna measure from this flange down to the pinion gear, measure the pinion depth, because when I put new bearings in there, I'm gonna need to know that, so I don't have to reset up the gears and take it apart and put it back together 15 times. The same thing goes for side to side as well, but you know, there's proper ways to do it, and then there's my way. It all should work. And then while I'm here, I'm going to put new brake pads and shoes and bearings out here. Even though these bearings feel fine, I might as well put new bearings and seals. I got all the kit. Got new rotors. Reason that's out here is because I checked the backlash. It was about 9 thousandths. It's supposed to be 8 to 12 according to Google. So, and the pinion seal was leaking a tiny bit, so when I pull that apart I'll put the new seal on that. But I think this is a pretty good way to do it rather than crawling under the bus, unless you can, you know, put it on a proper lift. I don't know what that stuff's doing here. But yeah, trying to get everything adjusted in there and measure the torque from the bearings and preload and all that junk. It's like, yeah, this is way. It would be more ideal if it wasn't in a dirt pile. Okay, so here it is. I had to loosen the bolts up with a proper Ugga gun, because the little one in the backyard doesn't quite do it. Electric jobber. So this is a 3-pinion differential. 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure whether this thing needs to be marked so it goes on the same way, but might as well put it on the same way. I'll probably put some marks on there with a center punch, because all the stuff's going to go in the solvent tank. I gotta pull the bearings off to put new bearings on and clean it all up. But let's take a look at this thing. All right. But it doesn't look too bad. Let's get a little closer look at this guy. So this is a Belleville spring. This basically just puts an initial preload on the clutch pack, and there's another clutch pack down there. So like all gears, there's a pressure angle, so as soon as you put load on these gears, it pushes it that way. But this gives the initial preload, and then more preload happens, so it moves farther away. And then there's like a clutch plate, like a friction plate that's attached to this, and then it's just a piece of steel, and then a clutch plate, and then a piece of steel. So alternating. This transmits torque with these little fingers to the carrier housing, those little slots there, and then to the carrier axle and stuff. It transmits it through the splines. So, and then the same clutch pack on both sides. But this thing was making a weird like stick slip situation, and I thought maybe the gears were bad, but they kind of look okay from this angle. But we'll get it apart and get a closer look at it. And the tree chopper people are doing their tree chopping thing today. Alright, so that Belleville spring looks a little bit of wear on it, but nothing terrible. Quite a bit of wear on this plate where the Belleville sat. It's kind of made a bit of a groove in there. Just going to lower the preload a little bit, but not too bad. But these clutches seem like they still have some semblance of material left on them, friction material that is. It's like some trash went through there, but not too bad, honestly. Put this all back together. Let's take a look at the gear. I mean, there's definitely some wear on it, but I wouldn't think that would make any noise. I don't see any pitting or anything like that. And these gears are not super accurate. They're typically just forged gears, right? They're not even machined or ground afterwards. They're just like a forging. And then, I mean, they machine the spherical and the bore and stuff like that, but the actual gear faces are just as forged, which is fairly accurate. But I mean, these things don't spin fast, so you don't need them to be super accurate. Otherwise, they would make a lot of noise if they spun really fast. And the whole point of these gears isn't to be efficient, right? It's made, especially on a locking differential like this one, limited slip. It's like the binding of these gears is helpful to work as a differential. In a traction limited situation, that is. So there's a balance between, it's called bias ratio, how much it locks the left side to the right side versus torque. So yeah, all this seems to look pretty good. That kind of seems okay. Looks like I took a perfectly good, not really. It's got 180,000 miles on it, so it's not perfectly good, but that one has a B on it. I don't know what that means, but anyway, we'll get this thing all cleaned up and put back together with new clutches. So in the meantime, I'm gonna mark these so I put them back in the same spot and pop it in my solvent tank down yonder and clean it all up. And then I have a new kit. Comes with friction modifier, which is, you know, this uses a 75 140, I think, gear oil. So yeah, it comes with new friction. Well, the friction plates are these guys, and then these are the in between the steels. So this is what the new friction plate looks like. Quite a bit different. This one has like separate pieces so the oil can get through there and cool it off. So it's probably a little bit more durable under extreme usage than these flat ones. So this kit comes with, you know, all the plates you need and new Belleville's. So yeah, it's like building a puzzle. And then I also got this kit, which comes with carrier bearings, which are, you know, these bearings are these guys. So I'll have to replace those, and then these bearings over here are the pinion bearings and the pinion seal and shims and all that junk. It also came with new bolts if I was going to replace the ring gear, but I won't. And gasket maker. I don't know what that other thing is down there. Oh, a little brush, I guess. So anyway, it came with 0 instructions, so that should be fine. I don't usually read those anyway. So anyway, we'll get this all disassembled and labeled and cleaned up, and then we'll come back and have some fun here. Okay, so I got this carrier all cleaned up and everything looks pretty good. There's a little bit of wear down here from where the Belleville slips a bit, but overall it looks fine, I think. As does this. However, now that I got this gear cleaned up, if this thing will ever focus, you can see it's pretty bad wear right in here. So I think that's what the problem is, because these guys, they're attached to this Belleville spring, and so when you load the gears up, the gears actually move outward, and that's going to push it into this kind of screwed up part, and then it rides up on that screwed up part, and then when you go around the corner it slips back, and so you get that stick slip scenario. So it's the gears. I think these clutches are actually fine. I mean, I'm in here anyway and I already bought them, so I'll put new clutches in. But the reason, and one of my drivers, Luke, was telling me it's the gears, not the clutches, because when I'm backing up my 8,000 pound trailer, it doesn't do it. It's only going forward. And he's like, yeah, the clutches don't have a direction, right? Depends if you're going left hand corner, right hand corner, that's the only direction thing. But backing up, That's the gears. And you can see the drive side gear is foobar and the regen side is fine. I mean, not fine, not perfect, but a lot better. So anyway, I ordered new gears, and notice how this has splines in it for that. So here's the box of gears that I received. And you might notice not so much. So these are for open differential. Those are probably the same, but anyway, so I got these from Torque King because it was kind of the only place I could find that had them. And it turns out they didn't have them. So anyway, I called those guys back and said, hey, you sent me the wrong ones. And the guy's like, gosh darn it. And I'm like, oh, has this happened before? And he's like, yes, it's happened before, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he doesn't have any stock. He's going to try to find some for me. So I'm a bit dead in the water here again, which is pretty normal. So luckily, there's 1,000 other things I could focus on. Can and should focus on. So I'm going to pick one of them. I'm going to spin my wheel of doom and see what it lands on. Or, yeah, whatever I feel like it. So anyway, we got lots of, lots of pieces to go together. Probably not that, but that. So we're working on something else today. That. I guess there's other stuff I could do, but yeah. This is how it works. You can't deal with this, then find some other stuff to have fun doing. Maybe fishing. Okay, so I've been waiting a few days for the new spider gears to get here, and it doesn't seem like they're going to show up anytime soon. So I made an executive decision to throw this thing back together. I'm going to throw the new clutches in it. That way we'll learn something, right? I mean, it could be it's just a friction modifier, which is like a polymer that they add to the oil that was just old, maybe didn't work. Clutches seem to be the right thickness, and there's a little bit of wear on some stuff and some bearing, or some washers and the Belleville and stuff, but I'm just going to throw it together with new clutches and put it back in, and then maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever, maybe I can find some of these. The guy at Torque King's looking for them, so maybe they'll show up in a couple weeks, but I've got to get this thing back together because I can't be without a truck. Plus the smog's due next week, so that was my bad calculating. Okay, so these have been soaking in Palmolive for the last, 45 minutes or something. And gear oil, but mostly at the bottom it's this junk. Anyway, so now I'm going to throw all the new clutches and stuff like that in there. So this is the pack that I took out, so it's just the same order as this. Bevel spring goes like that, and then the shim, I already measured the shim. It's the thickest shim out of the set. I think it's 65 thou. So there's 3 pieces to this puzzle. There's the steel plates that go in between the clutch packs and interface with that. And there's the clutch plates, and then there's a Belleville, and then there's a shim. So this is the stack of shims and Bellevilles. 2 Bellevilles, 1 for each side, and then all the thick shims and thin shims. So they nicely label. Oh yeah, this one 65 was the thickest shim, so, or 60 was the thickest. So if I want to match that, I have to put a 35 and a 30 instead of a 60, which I can do. I'd rather use one, so that's what I'm going to do. This isn't exactly an off-roader, so Can use the 60. Be a little light. So that's that guy. And then that's that guy. And then the next thing is the friction disc. We'll flip these over again. Take the green ones first. Okay, I think that's it. And then this thing should be marked. Oh, okay, this is the mark right there that I put on it. So that lines up with this guy. A little bit of schmooze hobbing on here. Okay. Right there's the mark. So that goes lines up with that mark. And of course this thing's going to try to fall out when I this will get dumped into the differential while it's open to the air back yonder. And then I'll top it off with the rest of that, put the cover on, back from the jump. Alright, so that has closed the gap up or down, I don't know. Close the gap. There's no more gap in here. So now I'm gonna, not sure why, but I bought a brand new thing, a thread locker, because my old bottle's like 27 years old. Okay, so it's a new day. I got this, it looks like crinkle paint, but I threw this in the, it was all rusty, so I threw it in the molasses barrel and cleaned it up. And then when I painted it, it looks all crinkly now, which I kind of like. Anyway, I digress. So, I got this all put back together-ish. You can notice that I marked these 1 dot, 1 dot, 2 dots, 2 dots. Just so I put it back in with the main bearing caps in the right way. I still need to torque this to 90 foot-pounds, 85 foot-pounds, something like that. But the way I put this together was I just set this on the ground. That's in the brake calipers. Brakes on there, and pads. And I set it on the ground. And then I hitched it onto this little guy. And then rolled it over here. And then I just unscrewed this little guy a little bit. So it just went down like an inch every minute, whatever. So I just stood here with the bearing caps on and guided it in and then bumped it with a mallet to get it seated, and then yeah, basically put the caps on. So these are all tightened down by hand. I'll just torque that to 85 or whatever. And then this is the polymer. See, it's like a plastic. That's the friction modifier, and it kind of comes out of suspension. And so, yeah, that probably should have been changed. It may have fixed it. I don't know. Anyway, so the plan for today is to get this torqued and throw some oil, green oil inside here, fill it up to the capacity, RTV this, put the cover on, torque those bolts, and then throw the axles back in, torque all these bolts, both sides, and then as you can see the ratchet straps are around this thing, so I'll pick this up with Ricardo. If you don't know what Ricardo is, my trusty skid steer. So, and then put the hydraulic jack on the ground over here and set the pumpkin on that, and then roll it back into place and jack it back up until it lines up with this little alignment dowel here, and then U-bolts back on, and brake lines, drive shaft, you know, not a lot of stuff. So it should be done by, it's like 8:30 right now, so I think this will be done by 10:30 probably. Shouldn't take more than a couple hours. And then I'll have to, you know, bleed the brakes because this is probably empty. So yeah, so we'll get going. Plus I have the friction modifier in there, so it's up to like there. So it probably needs a little bit more. I'm gonna put the cover on now, and then I'll tip it horizontal and check the level, and if I need to add some, I'll add some before I put it in the truck. It's the only benefit of having a integral carrier rear end, which is this is instead of like a 9-inch Ford or an 8-inch Ford or some Pontiacs and stuff, early ones. You throw the third member in there and then you got to put oil in it. So this is not better. Not better. Carrier's better. You can just pop that out and go play with it on your workbench. This thing you got to take full axle out. Anyway, my opinion, could be wrong. So you can see some of these have a really lot of Loctite left on them. So I probably should have soaked these in acetone before putting them back in just to get all that Loctite off of there. But I didn't. But you can learn from my mistakes. Okay, so after my wife was so graciously helping me, basically what I did was I got this guy. There's like a little rivet thing on the top of here that fits into this to line it. So I got that one in and I just held it up with this, compressed the spring a little bit. It's my little jack. This is kind of bad, but whatever. So now that one's in the hole, that's holding the pinion at the right angle. And then I came over to this side and put the big jack under there, and I got it slid forward far enough forward so this one's lined up. So now I can put the U-bolts back in and hook up the brake lines and all that junk. So drive shaft, that might be helpful. So anyway, yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but I don't know. I think it might be a bigger pain in the ass trying to work on it down there with a gas tank in your way and laying on the ground. If you have a lift, yeah, sure. But my lift is rated at 8,000 pounds and this truck weighs 8,000 pounds, so plus it's longer than my shop. So anyway, yeah, this is how most people are going to be doing it if they're going to be doing it. So yeah, I think I'll go get some water. It's pretty warm today. Do some hydrating and come back, put the U-bolts on, torque those all up, and yeah, pop those bolts off of there, retorque those with Loctite, put the brake lines on, all that stuff. Okay, so I got quite a mess going on here, but I got those torqued back down, I got the drive shaft on, I got the e-brake cables on, I got the hydraulic line to the rear brakes. So now I'm just going to pop these off, put Loctite on them. I also have to tighten these up. So I'll do this at the same size socket and the same torque, so I'll torque those at the same time as I torque these. And then I have to get the wifey out here to help me bleed some brakes, mostly the rears. And then, yeah, then I'll take it over. Oh, I got the new shock absorbers put on there. If you've never put gas shocks on, you got to be fast because they have like a plastic tie on them like this. So you disconnect the tie and it shoots out. Of course, there's damping, so it goes kind of slow, but you got to get the bolt in just as it comes past. Otherwise, then you got to try and compress it, and it's a big pain in the butt. Anyway, so I'm gonna whiz these out, put Loctite on and whiz them back in, and then I'll torque them to 85 foot-pounds. And then, yeah, we'll be less not done at all. Alright, so got the brakes all bled. Wifey helped me with that. Have to torque the lug nuts still now that they're on the ground. Maybe clean this mess up. And top off the reservoir on the brake fluid. And then, yeah, off we go to the log station. So, final thoughts on this. I think if you're just doing the differential, since you don't need a case spreader and all that stuff, it's probably easier to do it in the truck. However, if you're going to set up the whole rear end, new bearings, new gears, I think taking it out probably makes more sense. Unless you have a lift, then you know maybe you can do it in there. But laying in the dirt, I don't know. It's unpleasant. So maybe I'm just getting old and tired. But the good news is the doggy's feeling better today. Back to playing. We let her stay with a friend while we were out of town, and she came back with a rash and nose is all raw and generally unhappy. So I guess we're gonna do a Artman 360. Alright, so take this thing for a test drive. Velcro that down with something. Day. That's all better. It's super smooth now. Alright, this is a guy that parks in the middle of the road. Well, not really the middle, but his driveway's on a 45-degree incline, and I think the mirror had been knocked off that truck like 3 times because he parks halfway in the middle of the road. Oh yeah, this feels better. It's all fixed. Nice. Okay, so it's not the spider gears, it's the clutches. Good to know. And I think my e-brakes are adjusted a little bit too tight, because I'm smelling a little bit of, or it's just, they're not round, they'll get round. So, it does seem to engage a little bit higher up, so that's good. I don't want to lean on this thing too hard because the oil and the friction modifier haven't really been mixed too good yet, so I don't want to put the friction discs under too much stress quite yet until it gets all homogeneously mixed. But I think that fixed it. So, not the spider gears, it's the clutches.